What's up, Badger fans? It's the last day of the show of the season. We were this close. We should have won it. Let's talk about it. Doggone.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Justin, man. Like last game of the year, they had it. They should have won it. Hammy, you got to get out of here, but my son is crashing the party again. They lost to LSU 35-31.
We have sad music? Is that what I'm getting here?
Yes. Lincoln, guys, you got to get out of here.
Wait, we need to be pensive now for a little bit and look inward, everyone.
Clearly, my children do not feel the pain of this.
All right. Honestly, incredible game for the first 3 3/4. And then we lost poise. Like in the big moment when we needed it most, we lost our poise. And I hate to say it because I don't want to bag on anyone in this game because everyone played so well. But that was brutal to watch how that ended. That had shades of the Minnesota game where we came down and then had 10 penalties in a row. We turned it into a third and 35 or whatever it was.
It was the worst thing ever.
Yeah. It's like we had it second and 2 or whatever. I can't even remember what it was in this. And then suddenly we had 3 straight sacks where we lost 25 yards.
I thought we were gonna honestly, it felt like we were driving, we were doing well, and then the wheel just came off of it, right? It felt like the offensive line had some issues. Mordecai, this is the one spot where, and there's a ton of good to get into here. There really is. There's a ton of good.
Let's get the bad out of the way and then go to the good.
But there's a moment where it felt like the old Mordecai reared his head a tiny bit, right? Rip the ball. Because LSU on that very last play, for example, they blitzed more than we could block. You got to get rid of the ball.
Yeah, just drop it off to somebody and let him make a play. If you throw a 5-yard pass that he has to run 15 yards before somebody gets to him, given how deep everyone was playing, so be it. But at least take the opportunity that somebody makes a block for him or he squirts through and somebody misses a tackle. You have to give an opportunity there. But yeah, it was rough watching that ending. And they played so well. And it looked like they had LSU on their heels. And then a self-inflicted wound ended up costing us. And that's kind of been the story of the season. Self-inflicted wounds where things were just not clicking quite right. But there was so much promise in this game based off what we saw.
I'm still annoyed. I mean, because honestly, it felt like Wisconsin dominated this game. It really did.
Yeah.
LSU led for 3 minutes of this game. Mm-hmm. And there were moments in the first half where you make a field goal. How big is that missed field goal by Bacos? How big is that drop pass by C.J. Williams? That overturned penalty where Vinny Anthony got the ball at the 1-yard line. Yeah. It felt like there were multiple points in this game where Wisconsin could have blown it open. Yeah. And we left the door open. And if you leave the door open to a team that is really good, LSU is really good. They have 2 NFL receivers. They have NFL guys. If you leave the door open like that, Justin, they're going to kick it in and they're going to take it. And that's what happened. We kind of deserve this because we didn't capitalize.
Yeah. As much as I love seeing that the toe was out. And yes, it was out. But in all honesty, I still think they score on that drive. But I get it. Yeah, it was a bad call. I don't know how that wasn't overturned. It was pretty obvious on one of the views that his foot was half out. And I called it when I'm watching it. And they're like, oh, his foot looks in. I'm like, does it? I'm like, because I'm looking at it. It looks like it's on the white. From what I can tell, I don't know what you're looking at.
Look, we have to talk about this for a second because we were going to at some point in the show. And P, thank you for making the comment. Justin, thank you for taking it. I was livid on this because his foot is clearly out. Why do we have replay? His foot is clearly out of bounds. It's out of bounds. What are you looking at? And that doesn't mean, to your point, Justin, it doesn't mean LSU doesn't score in the next play. It doesn't change in the big picture. There's bigger issues in this game, but his foot is clearly out of bounds, and the announcer is just well, I don't know.
Yeah, the announcers are brutal in this. This is an ESPN staff.
Dude.
Come on, guys! The bias in this was bad. They were not happy in this game until LSU took the lead, and then all of a sudden they're joking around and calling it. It's really? Like, this is about as biased as it gets of a broadcast. And they're sitting there like in shock that Wisconsin's came to play. It's like Wisconsin came to play against Ohio State this year. They're going to come to play.
They did the same thing that every ESPN crew has done for 20 years. They're like, maybe Wisconsin has a few guys who can run. I'm like, yeah they do. It's like, listen, LSU has more athletes in Wisconsin. We're not here to like make that point, but like, calm down. It's not like this crazy shock that Wisconsin's in this game.
The two guys on the outside for LSU were the difference in this game. Like, they had two guys that were capable of any mistake, and they could make you pay and pay bad. And Forkerine, they were just torching him left and right in this game.
Yeah, that was a bad game for him.
Yes.
I want to. This first segment feels like the frustration segment. Next segment, I want to talk about some of the positives. But while we're on the frustration segment, first and goal at the 1. Right, you have that Bryson Green touch.
We got too cute. We just flat out got too cute there.
I thought it was too cute too. Like, A, why rush it? B, if you're gonna run the ball, just run the ball up the gut. This is again where I continue to
push on it. Like, seriously, you have a big back in there, and Aker, I believe, was in on that play.
Mm-hmm.
Have him come up behind Mordecai, go under center, and I realize you don't go under center very often. Just have him push.
Mm-hmm.
Just take your chances on that. I'd much rather do that than running an option play out of the shotgun. It's like, oh man, if this doesn't go right, it's going to take more time to develop than you'd want. Like, that's the type of play that if you're trying to catch them off guard, that maybe you go to, not something where you're running your initial play that you run something like that. And they were like, they broke through instantly on that.
Yeah, it was blown up. I think my biggest thing with that is on the 1 yard line. I don't feel like you necessarily have to catch them off guard. Just hand the ball to Aker.
No, I agree. Like, I don't want to go to call them off guard on that play.
It feels like the upside of that play isn't worth the trade-off where you get a 7-yard loss. And then the other one, Justin, is a 98-yard drive from LSU. Like, you pinned them. You can't give. You're up. You cannot give them a 98-yard drive, right? That second play on that drive was the 9-yard draw. You missed a couple tackles. You got to defense. You got to make a play there.
I think the obvious thing that we saw on this one is just the lack of guys that are able to cause pressure off the edge. Like, their quarterback was comfortable the whole game, and that's why he threw it. Like, he made plays, but like, he had all the time in the world, and that was a big part of why he was able to make plays. You didn't make him uncomfortable at all in this game, and that was the issue. Wisconsin played a dominant offensive side of this game, and LSU's offensive line is good, but the lack of playmakers on in the front 7 on defense is a massive issue, and it's why they attacked the portal as much as they did. It's why they really need to get some defensive linemen still.
Yeah. Now, Mike H says a great game until the end, but showed we really need defensive line pressure. Justin, that's the exact same thing you're saying. It's what you and I have talked about. We said this a lot. Like, the defensive line, the pressure in the front 7, like, you couldn't get after him today. Even on blitzes, I felt like we several times sent a corner. We sent Allegro. We sent Muma. Even on the blitzes, I didn't feel like we were really getting home.
No, not at all. And I think with it, honestly, with Allegro, it's just, you can't expect one guy that they have to account for to be enough unless you have a guy on the edge who they can't send help. Like, if Allegro's coming up the middle, the reason why we used to be able to do so well with our interior blitzes was the fact that we had a guy on the edge that drew so much attention that you couldn't help double. And because of that, it really makes it problematic when you just are mucking up the middle. And LSU's like, cool, we'll just send 3 guys there and create a wall and stop everybody. Allegro it was too packed in. Like, there was no room to really get home on there. There's no pressure from the outside.
I think fundamentally, Justin, if you look back at the last 5 years of Badger defenses, the last 10 years, there's always been guys who could win one-on-one battles consistently. And I just think fundamentally we lack that a little bit right now. We just don't have guys that can win one-on-one.
No, not at all. I don't think there's nobody that I look at that can do anything but get a coverage sack.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's nobody that's winning in the first second and a half off the snap. And that's an issue. You look at it, you watch what Herbig's doing on Sundays now for the Steelers. The amount of, when you see how quick he is compared to what we have now, it's like, it's night and day. Like, there's nobody that moves like that off the snap. And that would have made a massive difference in this. Because if you get Nussmeier seeing that guy flash the second the ball snapped, suddenly he's moving off his platform and he's got to throw on the run. And I don't think that he's making half these throws if he's got to move. That makes him super uncomfortable.
No, I agree. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with some of the positives, though, some of the young players that flashed, talk about this game, because it was a great game. This was a fun bowl game to watch. We're going to talk about that coming up next, plus your comments. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the #1 place to get all your sports betting needs, futures, parlays, teasers, spreads. I was on the Badgers on this game. I actually picked them to win, so I had them on the spread. It was 9 points. So I made a little money, although I don't feel better in the moment about that because, honestly, like, I'm super bummed they lost, but I do all the betting on FanDuel. It's incredibly easy. The user interface is very fast, simple to use. Payouts are incredibly quick and easy. That's where we go on Locked On Network, and we go there for a reason. It is an incredibly easy-to-use betting sportsbook. And now new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. If your winning $5 moneyline bet hits, that's $150 back in bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make your first bet a layup. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NFL. It's where we go to do all of our bets. It's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. All right, Justin, I want to talk some of the good. So obviously that stunk, right? We lost the game. I felt like we should have won it. Like, there were some really interesting things out of this game, though. I'm going to start with the thing we're all here to talk about, the snaps. You're going to say Trech. I'm going to say the snaps. It's Jake Renfro.
I honestly thought that's where you were going.
Okay, good. Like, people, we were talking in the Discord. We were texting. We were like, "Where was this Mordecai all year? Where was this? Where was this passing game?" I don't want to make too much out of snaps, and I don't want to be too hard on Tanner Mordecai, but there is an element of just, you could tell there is
timing was much better.
Timing was much better. And by the way, the other thing I'd point out, for a guy missing basically 2 years of gameplay, Renfro looked great. Like, he looked incredible.
He can move. Like, I was watching him in a few plays. I'm like, this guy's got some juice. Like, he moves really well for a center. You see how quick, a second that ball is snapped, that he starts adjusting to what he's going to block. And I was like, this is what we thought we were getting, a guy who looks like he can be an all-conference type guy with his movement ability. He's going to be a guy who can really come off and block off the snap. And I think that bodes well for this next year. And that's a good defensive line for LSU. There's athletes on that defensive line.
It's not, listen, we've talked about this. You talked about it on your show. I talked about it on mine. This is not like a vintage LSU defense, but to your point, there's athletes there. There are absolutely athletes on that defense. Renfro held up. I thought the snaps made a big difference. I think the timing matters. The other thing I want to go to is the just overall receiver group, right? I thought Vinny Anthony looked really good. I thought Quincy Burrows had some moments, and then I thought Trech Kekahuna looked like he was basically, anytime they looked at him, and you and I talked about this for a year, right? When he signed, when he decommitted, like, we've been excited about Trech forever.
I called it on the last catch when we were in the Discord, and I said, look at the separation he has on that last catch that was like a 3rd and 10 or whatever it was, and he had like a 15-yard catch. I'm like, no, the guy's not even close to him. Like, he's got 4 yards of separation on the guy, and I'm like, when you have a guy that's that small and quick, if you don't get hands on him, he's a problem. You can't get close enough because he's too sudden. And that is, like, I love Pauling. Trech is even more than what Pauling is. And I think Pauling has NFL type slot guy ability in him.
Well, Trech is a little bigger, right? That's part of the difference is Trech is a little thicker. He's a little bit taller. That first catch he had in the flat, this LSU defensive back comes up and he put this move on him.
Yeah, linebacker.
Yeah, he didn't touch him. Like, he didn't touch Trech. There is a future there with Trech Kekahuna that if you're a Badger fan, you got to be super excited about. Let's also talk about Pauling a little bit. Like, anytime Pauling wants to be open, he's open.
Yeah.
LSU couldn't guard him. And there's a moment where I loved it. And I don't know if anybody else caught this. The announcer said, man, anytime LSU, and I'm paraphrasing here, anytime LSU tries to play man coverage with these Wisconsin receivers, they're just getting smoked. When have you ever heard that regarding LSU DBs and Wisconsin receivers?
Never. With us against any SEC team, we've never heard that. We've always had to scheme open guys in the past. And now I think there's some legit athletes. Like, we talked about Vinny Anthony a little bit outside of this, and I still think he needs to put on some weight. I think that's the biggest issue with him is I think physically, if you can get into him, it's a problem. I think that he is capable of, though, taking the top off of defense 100%. If you don't get hands on him, he's got 4.4 speed. I think Anthony is capable of separating from even good cornerbacks. He just needs to get past them in order to do it. There are a couple times. There's several times he beat his man deep in this game.
I'm going to kick this to you for a sec because this is kind of the positivity section. What else stuck out to you in terms of you were really excited about seeing this game?
I thought Wooler played a really good defensive game on the defensive side. Obviously, you got another pick for Ricardo. And I think it was pretty clear in this game that they just decided we're not going to throw his way. You notice that Neighbors was effectively quiet the bulk of this game after the first couple catches. And then it was basically the secondary receiver that did everything for them, which is obvious. Like if it makes complete sense. Why take shots at a guy who's probably an NFL corner when you have somebody who is still a work in progress and Forkerine on that side? And maybe he never gets it, but he was rough this game. And he had shown some hints here and there of being a guy who's capable of being a solid corner.
I think your point with Rico is really good because they really did start going after Forkran. They started going after Alex Smith at one point. They started going after basically anybody not named Rico Hallman. That pick he made, like he gets dinged a little bit. Rico gets dinged a little bit about not being the greatest athlete, but that is
he's a little undersized is really the only thing I can say about him. I think he's probably a small 5'10".
Yeah,
but yes.
Like the hands and the burst on that, like not many Wisconsin quarterbacks make that play. Like I don't care.
No, I would agree with that for sure. He's a better athlete than majority of the Wisconsin corners we've seen.
Let me give you another one. I thought Bryson Green played well. Like the entirety of the receiver group, I think that was the biggest takeaway.
He had 100 yards in this game.
He did well. Pauling, I thought Quincy had a nice catch. I thought Kekahuna played well. If you're looking, and we talk about this as the bowl game is a springboard to next year. Unless you're playing in the playoffs, all these bowl games are kind of springboards, right? The young players, how you look. I think you got to be a little excited about the receiver group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean we've talked about. I think what you and I thought with this is kind of what we're seeing in the portal a little bit. I think they're picking and choosing, but I think that they think there's a lot of promise in that room. But they're not super comfortable with not having experience. And that's why they have been kind of still looking, but not ultra aggressive in that regard. Because I think we talked about it. Vinny Anthony has a pretty high ceiling, I think. Mm-hmm. You look at it, I think Trech's is off the charts. He is a guy I think has all conference to all American type slot type ability down the road. And outside of that, you have guys like Brooks, who I think has some ability. You have guys like McIntosh, who has a chance if he can put it together with elite size and some really good speed for that size. There's athleticism in that room. It has to come together and be skill and athleticism, and then you have NFL guys.
I wanted to come back and kind of get comments. I also want to, Justin, talk about some of the game management, right? Punting. There was a punt on 4th and 2 near midfield. I didn't
disagree with that at all. I 100% thought that they should have done it because I don't like 4th and 2. I think that's an ugly number for me because it makes you kind of want to run, but I don't like running at that long of a distance with an athletic defense like LSU has. And then otherwise it's a pass play, and it's kind of like one of those pass plays where you tend to get cute and just trying to throw an out on a play where it gets broken up easily. Unless you're going to be really aggressive on it, I don't like 4th and 2. 4th and 1, I say go for it.
And this Brandon Katz says punting on 4th and 2 at midfield in college is horrible. I just don't love our short yardage running.
Yes, which is exactly why I was okay with the punt.
It feels like we get stuffed way too often on 4th and 2. And we saw it in this game. Not on 4th, but we saw it in this game too. Like the inability to run on short yardage is an issue for this team. And I didn't hate that decision, although I do want to – we're going to take a quick break, but then I want to start off with the idea. I felt like Longo got a little conservative. I felt like the staff maybe got a tick conservative in the second half. We're going to talk about that coming off the break and then just get into your comments. Again, the Badgers lose a close one. They covered – honestly, they all played LSU, and they just didn't get it done. We're going to talk about it coming after the break, but first, a quick break for our friends of the show, and a quick second to say thank you to every single person tuning in. You guys are incredible. Thank you so much. And Justin, as always, thank you for coming on as well. Brings much-needed insight to help balance out my frustration. I'm also 3 IPAs in right now, as every good Wisconsin Badger fan should be. All right, Justin, let's talk about this because we got a bunch of comments. One of the things I almost want to go back to the offseason where I talked to a Cincinnati reporter about Luke Fickell. And he said, the one thing that Bearcats fans were a little frustrated with Fickell, they loved him. They did not want to lose him. It wasn't like sour grapes, but they said at times it felt like he played not to lose. At times it felt like he got a little too conservative. I felt like in the second half, whether it was Fickle or Longo, I thought Mordecai played incredible. And we haven't even really talked about Mordecai. I thought he was incredible up until that last drive. It felt like they started trying to run out the clock instead of continuing to play the aggressive game that Mordecai was playing. That was my gut on it. Where were you on this?
A little. I think part of it was they wanted to start burning some clock. And that was pretty obvious to me. Like they knew that this game was, they wanted to do 2-1. I don't know if it's necessarily that you want to be conservative, but they wanted to have a drive that was going to require to eat up some clock time rather than score quickly. And yes, I guess you'd say, by definition, that's being more conservative. I think it was more, they wanted control rather than just chucking it down the field and potentially continuing a shootout, because you're waiting when you play a game where it's just a flat out shootout like that, it's going to be the first team to screw up. And that's going to be the team that loses the game. And I think that their way of looking at it was, the more chances we have at this, the more likely that things are going to go wrong. Now, I think it took you out of your, like you were really humming along and it kind of took you out of your rhythm. And I think that's the bigger part of it, is that we weren't running the ball terribly in part of this. Well, I'm not agreeing. I'm not necessarily agreeing
Justin's
with like handling it that way, but I can understand wanting to do that, because I was kind of looking at it like you wanted to play keep away a little bit in the fourth. It's fourth quarter. It's 4-minute offense. It's basically what you're trying to do.
Badger Borbell says, "Wow, Justin sounds just like PC." I just chuckle. I have to put that up. No. I mean, I hear what you're saying from their perspective. I felt like it was a mistake, and I kind of
I agree. I think it was too, given how much you're humming along. But I understand why they wanted to do it.
And just to be completely fair, even though I do kind of disagree with it, I felt like Tanner was controlling the game. I thought he was playing really, really well. I would have put the ball more in his hands. I thought Aker was running pretty well too. If you want to be fair and look at both sides of this, Aker had a pretty good game. But it really did feel like when Aker was running well, it was because LSU was worried about Mordecai passing. And then Mordecai,
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and then LSU kind of crowded a little bit, and we said, we're going to try to run out the clock. I thought
you're passing so well, in my opinion, what you should have done was just eaten the clock in between plays. Don't try to run, don't snap it till 5 seconds left then. If that's how you want to run clock, but just keep passing. You're in a rhythm.
All right, let's get into some comments here. There's a couple really good comments. Like John Shapiro said, coaches did a good job preparing for this game. I thought so as well. This team, what have we talked about all year, Justin? Slow starts, right? Coming out of the gates, being down 14. This team was ready to play. They were fired up. All the talk was how LSU was going to win by 10. Look at all the people Wisconsin doesn't have. LSU wants to win 10 games. Wisconsin was more ready to play than LSU. I thought the coach did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, this is the best offensive game we've had all season. Like it's not really close, so I can't really take too much issue with the coaching staff. I think what the issue is we still continue to look at the roster, and it's not quite where they want it to be yet. We were the less athletic team in this game, but the gap was closer than where it's been, and I think that it takes another massive step this coming year, and we wanted this game. It was clear they wanted this game. I think they wanted to control it at the end, and it was just a matter of you made a few mistakes that I don't think you can ever account for. Like the quarterback just losing the ball, like he was so good up to that point, and just seems like he just completely lost his poise.
That was such a killer play. Like that's the best game. I mean, obviously the best game he's played as a Badger, but that's got to be one of the best games of his career. Like he was torching LSU in a bowl game. He was on point. He was in rhythm. And then just have that last drive, right? It just sucks. It sucks for him personally. This was great NFL film. Like this, he was going to lead Wisconsin to this bowl game victory over an SEC opponent. And then it just, like to your point and what we talked about in the first segment, it just fell apart.
Yeah. Turned into Shane Falco.
Yeah, the Shane Falco. Atheist said would have preferred losing 59-0. No, I mean I would disagree with that. Like everybody has their perspectives, but this was a good game. This is at least fun to watch. I wanted to kick this over to you, Justin. You start with this one. This is from Kenneth. He says pass rushers. My question is that's the biggest hole in this team remaining.
Yeah, 100%. It's the toughest position to get, and why they need guys like Anelu and Heiberger to come in and be hopefully ready to play fairly quick. And if the speed is there, there's a chance those two guys as pass rushers could be ready as freshmen. Herbig played as a freshman in pass rush packages. I think there's a chance that both of them are capable of doing that, which would be a huge influx. And I think guys like Lowry and Pius also add to that substantially. They're both very athletic guys. They're both quicker than what we have there right now. And that's really the difference here. If you start getting edge pressure and collapsing the pocket, those guys in the middle have a chance to push. And that's where you get Allegro finding some cracks to work through in a game like this. And was the problem in this game. We weren't able to get pressure on them to put them on their heels. This game is a blowout if we have any sort of pass rush, because Nussmeier probably would have panicked a little bit more and either thrown the ball for grabs, or he just wouldn't have been as consistent as he was.
There's a ton of comments in here. I mentioned defense line's the biggest issue. There were a ton of comments about the cornerbacks losing coverage. Obviously, we talked about it.
They had a lot of time to throw the football.
That's my bigger point, right? Like, if you get some pressure, and it's not absolving some of those corners. There was some really bad cornerback play in this game. But if you get pressure on him, he doesn't have 4 seconds to step back, scan the field, and throw that deep vertical. Like, you got to make him more uncomfortable, especially as a young quarterback. This isn't Jaden Daniels, who you're trying to contain. You're worried he's going to break the pocket. This is a first-time starter who doesn't have elite mobility, right? You got to make him uncomfortable in a bowl game, and we just weren't able to do that, unfortunately. A couple times he hit him, but you just weren't able to do that consistently, Justin. And I think they work together, right? Coverage and pass rush obviously work together, but I think if you get great pass rush, that's the answer to helping your pass defense more than getting better coverage, in my opinion.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, and that's been the problem all year. This defense just does not have guys who are disruptive. We have to figure that out.
Oh, man, there's so many comments here. We're not going to get to them. Again, I'll always do a wrap-up show on it. Justin, if there's any comments that you see or anything else you want to get into, please take the stage.
So I'm going to jump on Brandon Katz here, who continues to say that we wet his pants and whatever. We threw for 140 yards in the second half. So I want to stop acting like all we did was run the ball in the second half. We still threw the football. We were more balanced than we were in the second half. We threw the ball 40 times in this game. I know you can argue that we got more conservative, and yes, we definitely did, but it's not like we just did a Michigan and ran the ball 26 times in the second half.
This is from I like this comment here. This is from JP. It's just frustrating that it seems like we dominated but lost. I want to add on to that. And I'm sure there's going to be some LSU fan watching this that I'm going to get a comment about, but Wisconsin should have won this game. There were so many moments in this game. And listen, should have, would have, could have. Nobody cares about that, right? I get that. But there were so many moments in this game where I feel not terrible coming out of it, right? You had the Vinny Anthony catch that got overturned with the penalty. You have CJ Williams dropping a pass. You had Bacos missing a field goal. This is the best Wisconsin. Let me flip it around like this. To me, this is the best Wisconsin performance of the year.
Yeah, I don't think it's particularly close. I mean, you can argue the defense. You can argue the defense, a little bit in this game. They weren't great defensively. They played really well for the first half, but I think that they started to wilt a little in the second half, which is, I think, LSU figured us out. They kind of knew what they could get away with against us in the second half, and they started taking shots. They were willing to hold on to the football a little bit longer once they realized that we couldn't get home. Yeah. And they're like, let the deep plays develop.
Dean Storm says the DBs coming in would have made a difference besides Hallman. There was a comment in the Discord on that long catch where I think it was Forkring got beat for the touchdown, and the comment was, that's why you need to go get a guy like Xavier Lucas. And whether it's Lucas or Agard or Harper, or it's one of the guys from last year's class, Justin, maybe it's a Snowden.
Or Declona. Yeah.
Or Declona, right? That's where that defensive back upgrade is going to come in and help, because you saw multiple times where LSU just kind of out-athleted us on the edges, which SEC teams typically do. I think them upgrading on the edges is going to make a difference in games like this in the future. I think that's a good point by Dean.
Yeah. We knew there were offensive issues with this team coming to the end of the season. There's a reason why a lot of the transfer work has been on the defensive side, and that's because there were issues with execution on the offensive side. I think we thought the athleticism was there for them to be at least solid on the offensive side. It was just execution had to get much, much better. Yeah. On the defensive side, there were holes that we would look at when you and I would talk about it, that it's just athletically, there are problems here. The middle linebackers look slow, and they continue to look slow in this game. There were times where I was watching Chaney on this where the running back's catching it out, and I'm like, he's 3-4 yards behind him. Like, you can't be that far. You got to close that gap so that quarterback can't pick up 5, 6, 7 yards on first down. There's plays where you watch the corners, on this. There's the outside linebackers. Did anybody get a pressure from the outside linebacker group in this game?
No, and I was waiting for Aaron Witt to get one in his triumphant return.
That's too much to ask for me. I want to see it, but it's with him just being able to get in the game. I'm happy to see that and get some film. Now he has some things to look at and work on. And this is to be fair again. This was a really good LSU offensive line. There's a reason why they scored as many points as they did this season. They did a good job of keeping them clean.
By the way, can we really quickly point out that Neighbors played the first half, set a record, and then sat out the second half? How crap is that?
Is that what he did? He actually sat out?
Because he got the record, and he's like, no, the dude opted out of the second half. I'm sorry, if you suit up and play, that I've never had an issue with people opting out at all. But if you suit up in a game and play, I'm sorry. If I'm an NFL scout, I'm being like, you would have to drag real competitors off the field. I'm sorry. If you suit up to get the record and then you sit out in a bowl game, that's unbelievable to me. I don't know. It's just weird to me, man. But all right, we're going to kind of wrap it up there, Justin, unless there's anything else you want to talk about. I thought this was a great Mordecai game. I think there's a lot of good to build off out of here. I'm really excited with the receiver group going forward based on what we saw.
Number one takeaway was that the wide receiver room is actually looks like it's developing. And that is very promising going forward into next year.
What about Rucci? Let's talk about Rucci for a second. So Bitney made the comment, Rucci better than Nelson. I need to go back and watch it. I thought he looked good, though.
I think he looked solid. I really need to see film where I can actually look at him play. He held up the first couple of snaps, but they ran the ball, at least the first snap that he was in there. And honestly, I would just need to see what the guy does, looking at him on an individual basis a little bit more.
This is from Badger Pat. Trech is going to be a monster. Cody Schmidt, Rucci looks very athletic. Jake Ionaro, good friend of the show, says, I'm proud of the way they played. They did good. Listen, the other thing I'd say is there were a lot of people who thought this would be a blowout. I wasn't one of them. But they competed. They played really hard. It's I'm not a moral victory guy, but it's nice to see a good game.
No, I mean, they could have come into this game and just rolled over and played dead. Nobody would have said anything about it because of the fact they were expected to get torched. We were playing up a couple of bowl rungs in this one. When's the last time you saw a 7-win team go into the Outback Bowl? Normally it's a 9-win team that's coming in. And Wisconsin is in at 7-5. Probably shouldn't have been there against a team that only lost its quarterback for the most part in LSU and still ended up, competing in this game and winning. And I realize the quarterback's a big loss, but it's not like LSU didn't have talent in there and there's a guy who played a little bit before. So it's not like they put in a true freshman who hadn't played a snap up to this point.
Yep. We're going to wrap it there. I'm
gonna disagree with that, Tim. I don't think Trech has the size to play on the outside. He's probably 5'9" at best, but the quickness is there. If you can't get hands on him, he's going to be a problem because I don't think you can cover him if you can't get physical with him.
Winning Gambler says, hey, Ryan, you thought the LSU quarterback would struggle. I think he did initially. Yeah. I thought there were throws behind.
There's a reason we got up 14-0.
Yeah, I thought there was a pick over the middle to Rico. He did struggle. My whole point was Jaden, you lose Jaden, you don't replace him. You replace him with a much lesser version of him, and that's why we got up. But listen, credit to him. He found his rhythm. He hit some open receivers. He's got dudes on the outside. I never said Wisconsin would dominate LSU. I did think we would win, but quite frankly, we should have won.
Yeah.
Doggone it. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. First show of the new year. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Justin, as always, for jumping in. Obviously, a bunch more content with this show or with this game coming up. But I think there's really good things to take out of this game. Some really good young players that flashed. And it was a good playoff game.
We're seeing clear growth, which is promising.
Hey, what did Pickle always say? We want to play our best at the end of the year.
They did.
100%. All right, we're going to wrap it up there on Wisconsin. Thank you guys so much. Nick Hitchens says, thanks, guys. Happy New Year. NJ
Happy New Year.
Onwards and upwards. Double Badger says, love seeing Van Dyke and Mabry on the sideline. Bunch of clips of Mabry on the sideline. Mm-hmm. There was a really good one, by the way. The announcer was like, oh, there's the future quarterback of Wisconsin. And they were kind of talking about Tyler Van Dyke, but meanwhile, Mabry met Toyer with
right next to him.
On Wisconsin, we'll talk later.